When I tell you we've got an absolutely stacked episode of Carving Up Live tonight, I ain't lying. Gonna start by talking about the Buffalo Bills closer than the score might indicate win over the Miami Dolphins. Why Buffalo's B-, B- offensive performance is actually more impressive than some teams' A+ performance. Talk about that in just a few minutes. Also, the Jimmy Kimmel suspension that's been kind of dominating the news over the last 48 hours. Second edition of Carving Up the Context. We never do that over the course of a week, but why the hypocrisy of his suspension exposes President Trump's attack on the First Amendment that has been going on for years. It's not some recent thing. Talk about that in Carving Up the Context. The Vol View, why I am as confident in Tennessee's ability to make a second straight college football playoff than I have been at any point this season, at least early on. Talk about that. The Eagles, the referees are going to crack down on the Tush Push, at least so the Eagles can run it legally, as we talked about throughout the course of this week. We'll see how that plays out. And of course, at the end, Week 3 NFL predictions. Bryson, Bleak, bet upset of the week. I feel good about it this week. And my favorite segment of all time, If I Were a Bettin Man. Carving Up is loaded on this Friday. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. Here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on X, Facebook, and Instagram. I am Bryson Carver. Loaded Friday episode. You heard the open. Tons to get into in the NFL, in pop culture / politics, which I cover on the show from time to time. If the story is big enough, I'll get to the Jimmy Kimmel thing in about 10 minutes or so. Dolphins, Bills to start. Again, I'm really excited about the Eagles topic because the fact that the NFL, or at least it got leaked, that the NFL has told officials crack down on these false starts, on the guards jumping early on the tush push that the Eagles have run. Could it affect them in their game against the Rams? I'll save that more for my predictions at the end of the show. In the middle, Vol View. Obviously I'll react to Tennessee's just devastating win, or loss rather, against Georgia. I'm not gonna lie, it might be the most painful loss I've had as a Vols fan in quite some time. But not just that, but a game tomorrow against UAB. I'm gonna be at that game, by the way. But a stat on Joey Aguilar, quarterback for the Vols, that kind of has confirmed what I've been saying for the last few weeks about his ability to throw the deep ball in the Josh Heupel offense, which is critical to the Heupel offense at Tennessee being as successful as it is. I'll talk about that in about a half hour or so. But first, Bills win 31-21 in a game where the score does not tell you how close it actually was. And the Miami Dolphins came in desperate. It's an AFC East divisional rivalry. Bills come in short week at home. Kind of a situation where it's like, sleepwalk. Miami's not very good. Their defense stinks. By the way, it does. The Bills play their B- game, and they still get the W by double digits. Now, to be fair, this was a tie game in the fourth quarter before Miami got called for a roughing the punter penalty. They gave the ball back to Buffalo, gave the ball back to Buffalo, converted the fourth down. They end up getting a touchdown. Dolphins end up driving down the field, and Tua throws a pick to Terrell Bernard, goes back the other way, and Matt Prater hits the field goal that puts the game out of reach for the Dolphins. We can talk about Buffalo's limitations on the defensive side of the ball because they are many. A Dolphins team that we all know is the ultimate finesse team in the National Football League. Look at the box score now. $130 on the ground. Devon Achane, finally had a Devon Achane showing. He was great. Ran for 5 yards a carry. The Gordon kid that came in, nice player, was able to run effectively. I thought Miami was shockingly good at the line of scrimmage against the Bills last night. That kind of caught me off guard to a certain degree. So Buffalo's defense is what it is. It's not very good. Now, understanding the fact that Ed Oliver's out, Matt Milano's out, but the whole point of adding a guy like Joey Bosa, who, to be fair, is going into year 10, but you thought would shore up that pass rush, give them a legit guy off the edge. I think the Bills are going to have to add a pass rusher at the deadline, maybe go after a bad team who's kind of selling like their third down pass rusher, kind of like when the Lions last year went out and got Zadarius Smith, or when the 49ers 2 years ago got Chase Young. Like, those guys weren't game wreckers, but somebody where you could say, oh, okay, we can add that guy to our squad and be a legit threat. Have somebody to be able to get to the quarterback on a consistent basis. But on the Bills offense, I didn't even think they were amazing. Like, Josh was great. Josh was insanely accurate. What was he, 23 for 28, I think? 22 for 28, 3 touchdowns. Had a passer rating of 134. He was spectacular. He was Josh Allen. And the fact that this is a guy who, between the year he came into the league, 2018 and 2023, in a 6-year stretch, led the NFL in turnovers. This season, ladies and gentlemen, 0 interceptions. He's been spectacular. And that's why I know I sound like a broken record, But I want to give credit where it's due as much as I can because of how loud I was on the other side just 2 years ago, where it's Josh is an unreal talent. I think he's one of the 3 greatest talents to ever play the position, along with Rodgers and Mahomes. You could certainly argue Dan Marino's in that discussion, but Dan couldn't run like this. But for years, it was upside, and boy, the downside is in the basement. It's not just that he would try throws into tight windows. It's that he would try throws into windows that were bolted shut like a max security prison. He'd be throwing balls to Stephon Diggs and triple teams and all that. Whether it was Diggs getting out of the building, whether it was Joe Brady calling plays, the best OC that Josh has had, whether it's the fact that his O-line is far and away the best he's ever had and one of the best in the NFL for that matter, whether it's the fact that, in part because of that O-line, James Cook is emerging as one of the best backs in football over the last couple of years. Whatever that is, he's eliminated it. He's not decreased it. He's eliminated it from his game. He gives the upside with virtually no downside, no basement, no floor. And so that's why I think he's going to win MVP, along with the fact that the Bills are going to have to score about 30 points per game, which they've done over the course of their first 3 games of the season. But the arm talent, the arm strength, I mean, Dalton Kincaid dropped a touchdown. The Bills had some 3-and-outs in the second half, gave Miami multiple opportunities, which eventually they cashed in when they tied it at 21 apiece in the fourth quarter. All of those components. And yet you look up and it's like, oh, they finished with 31. Got the touchdown late. Again, they were aided by the roughing the kicker penalty, to be fair. But then get this interception, Terrell Bernard. Prater hits the field goal. By the way, Prater missed a field goal in this game. Like, Bills weren't even, necessarily firing in all cylinders. And they still won the football game by double digits. They still scored 30. 30 points against the Jets. Or was it 30 points? It might have been more than that. 30 points. Yeah, they took their foot off the gas in the second half against the Jets because they had them beat, when it was all said and done. But 41 against Baltimore, 30 against the Jets, 31 last night against Miami. Like, it's a balanced offense. James Cook is running as well as he has over the course of his entire career, and that's saying something. He's living up to that contract. Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, slowly but surely is emerging into one of the more reliable tight ends, particularly on third down and in the red zone. Joe Brady's calling good plays on not just hand the ball to James Cook, but the play actions. When Josh hit the tight end on the left side early in the game to make it 14-7, like all of these different factors put the Buffalo Bills in position where they can absolutely be a Super Bowl, not just a Super Bowl contender. They've been that for some time, but to be the favorites to come out of the AFC today. I think it's absolutely fair. I'm not saying they're the best team in the AFC. You can make that case. I would not per se over the course of the duration of the season. I will bet against Patrick Mahomes winning the AFC, or at the bare minimum get to the AFC title game when he gives me a reason to. Until then, not bet against Mahomes. Obviously, Baltimore has the best or second best roster in all of football. The Chargers are really impressing me over the first couple of games. We'll see what they do this weekend against Denver. But if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you've got to be looking up and saying, man, at least if you're optimistic, and I think Bills fans, you could argue Bills fans should be pessimistic, but it's all they got in Buffalo. It is hopefully for them, 5 months of football, and that's it. As far as entertainment in that city, not bashing Buffalo, but that's what they've got, the Bills, kind of like the Green Bay with the Packers, to a lesser degree, obviously. If you look at the Bills' schedule moving forward, it's a lot of cupcakes. Next week they've got a home game against the Saints. Right now they open in Vegas as a 14.5-point favorite, which is ginormous. Home game against the Patriots. At Atlanta, okay, that might be a toughish game. At Carolina, they're better. At home against the Chiefs, they always beat the Chiefs in the regular season. At Miami, Tampa Bay's a hard one. At Houston, good defense. At Pittsburgh, home for the Bengals. Joe Burrow probably won't be back. At the Patriots, at the Browns, Eagles at home, and then they got the Jets. There's no reason, especially getting that opening game against the Baltimore Ravens, stealing the game in the fashion in which they did, taking care of 2 teams in the division that they should take care of, Jets and Dolphins. No reason this team shouldn't be the 1 seed, as I said, coming into the season. Schedule's weak. They'll beat the good teams. Yeah, they might slip up and lose a game to New England, or a miracle might happen and they lose to Pittsburgh. I'm saying as a Steelers fan, that's why I say a miracle. They'll lose, again, Chiefs, Eagles, maybe Houston because of that great defense. Like, they'll slip up. Like, they're not going 17-0. They're not going even like a 15-2. But 14-3, 13-4 feels like it's almost a lock at this point. As long as, knock on wood, Josh Allen's healthy, no reason this team can't win 13, 14 games and get the top seed in the AFC. And for the first time in Josh Allen's career, road to a Super Bowl goes through Highmark Stadium. Last season in the history of that stadium, it's going to go out with a bang, I think it's safe to say. So, good win for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, not even a great, so to speak. Again, I know the numbers look good. Josh had 3 touchdowns. They ran for $157, but just watching, had some solid drives. It wasn't necessarily flawless against a Dolphins defense that we know isn't very good. And when it was all said and done, it's like, oh, yeah, you look up, oh, they scored 31. I mean, that's what happened. Sure, they have breaks, but you need breaks, obviously, in these divisional games. As for Miami, look, I'll give credit where it's due. You know, I said coming in, I said on Monday, I definitely said it on Wednesday show when I predicted blowout. I thought this was going to be, I thought this game was going to be over at halftime and Mike McDaniel gets fired midway through the fourth quarter, so to speak, or at least Chris Grier and Stephen Ross and Dolphins ownership and front office would have made that call. Although Grier's probably coming in right behind Mike McDaniels or ahead of him. But all that being considered, I thought he coached a solid game. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you look at Warren Sharp, if I can get the stat here, Tua averaged only 6 air yards per attempt for the game, but recorded a negative 4.8% completion percentage over expectation. In other words, Tua didn't push the ball down the field and was still mediocre. Of course, we know, had the devastating interception where it was a telegraph pass if there ever was one. Look down the linebacker, Bernard, steps in front of the throw, takes it the other way, sets Buffalo up in a position where they can ice it with the field goal. But Mike McDaniel says, my quarterback's got limitations. He can't push it deep. You know you don't want him running. There was a play Tua runs on the left side first half. It was the drive where the Dolphins tied the game 14-14 at the half, and he's running. And if you remember last year, of the concussions Tua has suffered, one of them came in week 2, ironically on a Thursday night game against the Bills. This one was in Miami, though, and he got concussed on a scramble. And so he scrambled left side. I'm like, get down to it. I swear to God, I cringe every time I see that guy run. I think everybody does. Dolphins fan, Bills fan, everybody does. Because we're wishing the best for Tua. Long-term health, obviously. But limited mobility, concussion history, limited arm strength. You know, a receiver in Tyreek Hill who really doesn't want to be there and has the off-field stuff. Jalen Waddle played well, by the way. Caught the touchdown, obviously, to end the half, but wasn't healthy. You could tell wasn't quite himself. And they ran the football effectively. They controlled the line of scrimmage on a consistent basis. And listen, Tua, I feel like every time Tua was dropping back, I think it was like 12 passes behind the line of scrimmage or something crazy. A lot of screens, not a lot of pushing it down the field, a lot of system quarterbacking type of play calling on the part of Mike McDaniel. And so, I thought he could get fired after this game. I thought he could have potentially lost the locker room with the blowout, the way the way last season played out, then the bad news from training camp, then the first 2 games. He keeps his job, at least he probably bought himself about a month by doing that. That's the Buffalo Bills on the road. Now, to be fair, Miami caught a scheduling break in the fact that this game wasn't played in December. Otherwise, I can guarantee you it would have been a blowout. Because Tua, God bless him, we know, we've gone over the stats over and over. I'm sure we will. Knock on wood if Tua is healthy. We will late season. You know, his record's this, his pass rings that, his completion percentage is this, TD to interception ratio. I'm sure we'll go over. Everybody will. And so, but it was like 70 degrees in Buffalo last night. Weather wasn't a factor. They fought and they competed. And that is a good mark on the head coach. If Miami had played sluggish, they scored first drive of the game. If Miami kind of come out sluggish, not a lot of energy, it'd be like, okay, they've moved on from Mike McDaniel. They're 0-2 at Buffalo. They're cooked. They fought for their coach. That matters. And by the way, if you want to be an optimistic Dolphins fan, I know that's a hard thing to do. I get that. But if you look at the next few games, they don't play until next Monday. They have as long of a scheduling, long of a gap in their 2 games as you could without having a bye. Last night, and they don't play until next Monday against the New York Jets. That's a home game. They should win that game. The Jets are terrible. At the Panthers, I'm probably going Carolina, but the Dolphins absolutely can win that game. Chargers at home, that's definitely a loss. And then at the Browns. Like, if you're, best case scenario, if you're a Dolphins fan, after that Browns game, you look up and like, oh, we're 3-4. Okay, we're still in this race. As long as Tua is healthy, Tyreek hasn't been traded yet, and the defense can show signs of a pulse, well, we may have something. But when it's all said and done, yeah, this Dolphins team certainly is not making the playoffs, but I give them credit, the fact that they fought for their head coach, because, as the old saying goes, you can lose games, you can't lose the locker room. And it felt like after a certain point in time, like, oh man, is Mike McDaniel losing the locker room? At least for this game, he didn't. So kudos to him. You know what? I'll touch on, here's what we'll do. I'll touch on the Kimmel subject. By the way, yeah, touch the Kimmel subject in about after our first break, after the 30-minute mark. So I'll do that. I'll do carving up the context because that's when we generally do it. After all, I did do carving up the context to lead Wednesday's show, which it's always on Wednesday. But my good buddy Alfred Parslow Jr., shout out to him, Metropolitan Report, definitely subscribe to his show. Had him on at 6:30, and so I was like, I probably need to do carving up the context early. So it kind of, jumbled things up to a degree. I was obviously very happy to have Alfred on. But I decided let's postpone the Kimmel segment to 6:30 Eastern. Until then, here's what Josh Allen had to say, and then we'll move on to the Eagles.
We're obviously doing our job, going 1-0 each week. Still a lot to learn from, a lot to grow, a lot of room for growth in this group. A lot of young guys, but guys are stepping up. There's been some guys down with injuries, and guys are stepping up and making some big-time plays for us, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's a close unit that's gelling together really well right now, and got to keep finding ways to win football games.
I mean, that's what any Super Bowl contender does, and the Buffalo Bills certainly are that. And like I said, you look at their schedule moving forward, and you say, not a lot of. It's not exactly murderer's row the rest of the way. Again, they got Kansas City, Philadelphia. They've got some tough games the rest of the year, but generally speaking, those division games, I think New England will give them a push. I could very much see them in New England splitting. Because the Patriots have beaten them. I know different coaching staff and whatnot, different quarterbacks, but they've beaten them in the past, with Mac Jones at quarterback as recently as 2 years ago. And I know Niners fans think Mac Jones is, the heir apparent to Montana and Young, but he's not. He certainly showed that over the course of time in New England, but he's had good games against the Buffalo Bills in the past as recently as 2 years ago. I think it's safe to say Drake May can up that, to say the very least, because Drake May is much better than Mac Jones. Okay. The Philadelphia Eagles. This is really interesting to me. So it's been reported by Mark Maskey, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, from the Washington Post, that the NFL is telling their officials, hey, let's crack down on the tush push. And I call this from the jump on Monday's show, is the fact that, and I said this is the tush push is going to get banned because it's bad for television, it's boring, it's automatic, and the NFL not banned, but moved the extra point back for that very reason. Extra point was boring, automatic, you knew it was going to happen, so let's move it back to the 15, and there have been games decided by missed extra points. Roger Goodell literally stated almost verbatim, we want every single play in the NFL to be unpredictable. The extra point after a while was not. The tush push has not been. But also the reason they're going to ban it, difficult to officiate. First of all, you don't know whether Jalen Hurts got the first down or a touchdown, depending on the situation, because in some cases, as we saw against the Chiefs, there was one on the goal line after the pick off of the Travis Kelce drop, go down the field, get down to the 1 yard line. It looked like Jalen Hurts scored by the pylon cam. You couldn't freaking see because there were a bunch of Chiefs around him and Eagles around him. You couldn't see the ball. There's a clump of bodies. Can't see a number one Hurts jersey in there anywhere. But also the fact, as Tom Brady pointed out over and over, and like I said on Monday, do not tell me that on the number one game of the week, Super Bowl rematch with the greatest player in the history of your sport calling the game, that his voice does not matter. And Brady kept saying, guys, Philly's guards are jumping every single snap on the tush push. Like, what are we doing? It's kind of like when Juwan Taylor, remember a couple of years ago in that season opener against the Lions, Juwan Taylor kept jumping before the snap. The officials kept flagging, and Chris Collinsworth kept calling it out. They cracked down on that. Well, here's what the report says. And this is from Ramon George, the NFL's vice president of officiating, training, and development, who said this in a video to officials. Quote, anytime we have this situation, we're in short yardage. We know we want to make sure we officiate these plays. The offensive team has to be perfect in every aspect. We want to officiate it tight. We want to be black and white and be as tight as we can be when we get into the situation where teams are in bunch position and we have to officiate them being onsides movement early. Prior to the snap, looks like we have movement by the right guard. We also have movement coming across the defensive side. This is a very hard play to officiate. I get it. And as we continue, you can see the right guard moves early. You've got your defender who's trying to punch the ball. But more so, we have a false start coming from the right guard. We want to make sure that we officiate those plays tight and make sure every aspect of the offensive team is legal. And any movement that's not correct, we want to shut it down as a false start. False start would be the proper call here, end quote. So Ramon George, who's the head of NFL officiating, is saying, we've got to crack down on this because this has got to stop. Okay, they can run the play. They can run a quarterback sneak. They can even run the tush push while it's still legal. but they can't jump before the play happens. That is blatantly against the rules. That's a false start. And so I go back to what I said on Monday's show, is that the NFL has a history of taking out a play or taking out a rule if it's B, boring, or A, boring, and B, can't officiate it. Extra point, as I said, they moved back to the 15-yard line back in 2015. They moved it to a 33-yard extra point. For kickers nowadays, especially if your name's Brandon Aubrey or Chris Boswell, it's automatic. That's a walk in the park. I can do that in my sleep. It's not automatic for all kickers. Even Harrison Butker missed an extra point in Brazil against the Chargers that really affected the Chiefs. It happens. Steven Gostkowski, the first year this rule was implemented, missed a massive extra point in the AFC title game against Denver that kind of had New England chasing those 2 points the rest of the game. And what has the NFL done in terms of, implementing a rule or getting rid of a rule that makes no sense and that the officials can't call tight or consistently? The stupid Calvin Johnson rule. Remember Calvin Johnson? I think it was a week 1 game against Chicago way back in the day. Caught a pass. Lions thought it was a catch. Bears thought it was a catch. Everybody watching thought it was a catch. They go back and say, well, he came down and then he put the ball on the ground. He didn't survive the ground because it wasn't a football move, even though he's in the air and came down and then but he's in the end zone. So what football move is there to make? And then a few years later, the infamous one, Des Bryant. Makes catches Green Bay, 4th down, catches it, takes a couple steps, reaches his left hand across the goal line to try and score a touchdown for the Cowboys. Ball kind of pops out, incomplete, despite the fact, catch, 1-2, reach, elbow down. Still wasn't a catch. Like, the hell are we doing? The rule makes no sense. Jesse James, a few years later in Pittsburgh, and I think that was kind of the tipping point. Jesse James catches a pass from Big Ben against the Patriots, stretches the ball across the goal line, slams it on the grass, ball pops out after he's already made the catch and turned, incomplete. It's kind of a rule. It's like if a drunk guy in the bar can look at it and say, yeah, that's probably a catch, it's a catch. And so the NFL is like, yeah, this is a really dumb rule. Let's get rid of this. It's confusing our refs, players, coaches, fans. It's media. It's bad. That's why the Tush Push is going to be done for after the season's over. It's gone. First of all, it fell 2 votes short, just 2 votes short of getting banned this year, which, as I said on the show at the time, for the here and now, I'm okay that they didn't ban it because it would not have been the greatest look for, defending champion who rolled through the playoffs, their most effective play, you get rid of it months after they win the Super Bowl. Wouldn't have been the best look. But even if Philadelphia goes back-to-back this year, which they're fully capable of doing, I've got them winning the NFC this year, it's time to get rid of it. By the way, it's not like the Eagles don't still have a great offensive line. It's not that Jalen Hurts can't still squat 600 pounds, as we hear all the time on broadcast. They can still run an effective quarterback sneak. They can. Just not one where the center is literally lined up on top of the ball and the right guard is jumping. Really, both guards in some instances are jumping early every single time before the snap. Just officiate it based on the rules. Tush Push is legal for this season. Run as many times you want, Eagles. Just do it legally. That's the thing. And so, and by the way, on the defensive side of the ball, as they said in this video that got leaked to the Washington Post, it's like, what do you want us to do? The defensive players are trying to punch the ball. Like, it's just a big clump of bodies. Like, you can't see anything. It's not football. It's not fun to watch. No one likes it. Like I said, Eagles fans, be honest with yourselves. Giants, Cowboys, Commanders do this. How do you feel about it? You're pissed. You are. I mean, if this were back when the Cowboys had that great offensive line with Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, if they're pushing Dak Prescott for a first down on 3rd or 4th and short or at the goal line every play, you don't want to see that. No one wants to see it. So kudos to the NFL for cracking down on us. They need to. Like I said, boring and difficult to officiate. The NFL has a history of implementing policies to get rid of both. Okay. After the break, we'll come back because I really want to talk about this Jimmy Kimmel situation at ABC and the crackdown that we've seen in not just recent days, months, but actually years on the First Amendment by the current administration. Be back to talk about that in just 1 minute for a special Friday edition of Carving Up the Context. Stay right here. You do not want to go anywhere in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. So from time to time, if the topic is relevant enough in the world of sports, politics, pop culture, this is primarily a sports show, but if there's something that I feel like I would like to give a take on, or at least give a different spin on, I am never going to hesitate to jump into that opportunity on the show. So let's get right into it. As the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, wanted to talk about ABC's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely over a joke he made regarding, if we're going to keep it real, the president's reaction to the horrific assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, which obviously I talked about on this show last week. Feel free to check it out on the channel. As if it needs to be said again, what happened to Charlie in Utah was and still is utterly horrifying. I agreed with virtually nothing the man said, but the fact that he was killed in broad daylight, debating students, exercising his First Amendment rights should be terrifying to every single American. Said that last Wednesday. I'll say it again. Horrifying what happened to that young man. Awful. And for the record, I think it's fair to bring out. Let's go and put up this tweet. What Jimmy Kimmel actually said, which I thought he felt like he was calling out both sides. Jimmy Kimmel, for those that are listening to the podcast or can't see it, says, "Instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence." That was Jimmy Kimmel the day of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Well, Monday night, coming off of the weekend, he said, this is the joke. Again, unfortunately, we don't have the rights to show the footage or air the audio, so I'll read it here. This is what Jimmy Kimmel said on his Monday night monologue. Quote, "The MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, this is after he, by the way, this is after he played a video of Donald Trump being asked about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and he said, 'I'm doing good. By the way, we're building a White House ballroom across the way.' And Jimmy Kimmel joked, he said, yeah, he's in the fourth stage of grief, construction. And evidently that was enough to get Jimmy Kimmel's show suspended indefinitely. Now, I talked about the Stephen Colbert decision by CBS to cancel the late show with Stephen Colbert coming up this spring. I think his show's ending in like May or something. And I talked about that. And I said, listen, CBS and Paramount saying that there's a financial aspect of this wasn't technically false, because Stephen Colbert statistically, and I love Colbert, but he had lost more money than Fallon and Kimmel, kind of his two major competitors on NBC and ABC respectively. But there was obviously an element of, yeah, Paramount's trying to appeal to the president. They're trying to appeal to the FCC, which is controlled by one of the president's men. Get Colbert off the air. This one's even more blatant. This one doesn't even, you don't even think twice about it. And what I find really, really, really fascinating is that I find it amusing that the party for the last 4 or 5 years, really going back to COVID, but especially the 4 years of the Biden administration, they were big. Man, the Democrats, the left, they'll crack down on your First Amendment rights. They'll crack down on free speech, which, if we're being fair, I'm a political independent, social, liberal, fiscally conservative. To be fair, yeah, the left did crack down on free speech to a certain degree. I mean, think about individuals like, mostly comedians, but like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Ricky Gervais, the actress from The Mandalorian, Gina Carano, just go up and down the list. Chris Pratt, they've even come after. No question that they've, in some instances, tried to cancel certain individuals. This is why it kind of gave to the rise to cancel culture. No question the left has been hard on these individuals. Even Whoopi Goldberg got suspended for saying something questionable on The View. We've seen that play itself out over and over and over. And the left's track record on free speech, as I've said before, ain't exactly spotless, to say the very least. But the right is just as guilty, if not more so. And the reason I say that is because, as we've seen since Trump took power the first time, back in 2017, 2016 election took power January 20th of 17. The 4 years of that administration, the 4 years he's out of office, and now the start of the next 4 years that he's going to be in office. He and his people, the Steve Bannons of the world, the Stephen Millers of the world, go up and down the list. have successfully eliminated all of the Republicans who either aren't just full-blown red hat MAGA or completely oppose him, but still happen to be Republicans. Just go down the list. Mitt Romney, Bob Corker, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, Adam Kinzinger. Go down this. Mike Pence. Mike Pence was as loyal as anybody. But because he decided to not torch the Constitution in the middle of the Senate, that was just a step too far, and they came after his head, the insurrectionists, on January 6, 2021, at the behest, of course, of Donald Trump, who said Mike Pence did not have the courage to overturn said election. So they've eliminated everybody. If you don't say Donald Trump is the greatest, smartest, best-looking, most intelligent leader that we've ever seen in the history of the presidency, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, that's just not good enough. Even individuals like, as I said back in July, Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, very pro-Trump guy in the Senate. And he introduces a bill, bipartisan, by the way. And I give Hawley credit for it. I'm not a Hawley fan, but credit where it's due. To ban, to ban members of Congress from profiting off of the changes in the stock market, because obviously they have a head start on what's going on in that regard. Trump rips them to shreds for it. I also find it a bit ironic, because we've seen this in the world of sports, that the pro-First Amendment, and by the way, I feel like I'm Joe Rogan right now. Jamie, can we pull up the First Amendment? Can we pull up the First Amendment and see what it says verbatim? First Amendment of the United States Constitution says, and I quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is the First Amendment verbatim that we just gave you on Carving It Up Live. There are those that have made the case, well, ABC made the decision. The FCC made the call, so to speak. Right? Like this has come directly from the President of the United States. Except when you read a Rolling Stone article that talked about the behind-the-scenes aspect of all of this, in which they said, quote, multiple execs felt that Kimmel had not actually said anything over the line. He didn't. But the threat of the Trump administration retaliation loomed. In other words, kind of like what Donald Trump said or tweeted or truth or whatever the heck it's called back in July when Stephen Colbert's show was canceled long-term after this season. And he said, Jimmy Kimmel is next. Verbatim, that is what he said. Brendan Carr, by the way, who head of the FCC, based on his history, and we'll show you some tweets, appears to be against censorship of late night hosts. We're going to show you a series tweet. Here's the first one. This is from February 20th, 2020. By the way, during the first Trump administration. This is Brandon Carr, his own words. From internet memes to late night comedians, from cartoons to plays, the plays and poems as old and organized as organized government itself, political satire circumvents traditional gatekeepers and helps hold those in power accountable. Not surprising that it's long been targeted for censorship. Then in reaction to Twitter banning the Babylon Bee, which I think is like some sort of satirical website. They report fake stuff just for humor. I don't know. Brennan Carr, President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while also using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship. That was back in 2022. And as recently as, I think it was December 30th, right? December 30th, 2023, a year and a half ago. Quote, Brennan Carr on Twitter, free speech is the counterweight. It is the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. And we can hear what Trump said, actually, I think today, about the media who just reports completely unfair things to him.
I think it's very sad, but I think that reporting has to be at least accurate to an extent. Again, when somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech. That's no longer, that's just cheating.
Okay, first of all, it's not 97% bad. That's just one of the many numbers that he pulls out of his you-know-what. Second of all, yeah, they can report bad stories about you. Listen, is the press completely honest? Of course not. I've ripped both the left-wing and right-wing media for years on this show for their not even just inaccuracies, but giving you only the part of the story that fits their agenda. That is the name of the game that we've seen in cable television for decades. MSNBC on the left, Fox News on the right. But even in the world of sports, Donald Trump hasn't exactly been the champion of free speech. I'm sure we all remember back in 2016 when Colin Kaepernick, at the time San Francisco 49ers quarterback, took a knee during the national anthem to protest police brutality, and regardless of your feelings on the anthem, and I understand, genuinely, hand to God, I didn't have a problem with it because of the cause and because of what the form and fashion in which he did it peacefully, which, by the way, the kneeling was at the behest of a Green Beret. That's neither here nor there. I get why someone who served in the military, has family who served, or just as patriotic about Old Glory, had an issue with it. I get it. But it's not a reason for him to lose his job. Well, at least not according to the president back in 2017.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Doesn't seem too pro-speechy to me, does it? I don't know. Doesn't seem like that kind of fits the narrative that Trump is the champion of the ideals of free speech. Listen, the fact of the matter is, we can talk about the fear in which he's instilled in the Republican Party and their top leaders, in the sense that if you even think about criticizing him, he may not just come after you, he's coming after your family. I mean, he's went after Ted Cruz's wife. He's come after Nikki Haley's husband, by the way, for his military service. That's kind of a trend for him. Meghan McCain's father, the late, great John McCain, as great of an American patriot as there ever was. And when it was all said and done, to avoid backlash because it was politically expedient, they all came crawling back to the dear leader. As I said when the Colbert News hit a couple of months ago, I'll say it again. There is, and I don't know why, individuals and corporations cannot understand this based on the long track record that we have. There is no level of capitulation that is enough if you make even one slip up. And by slip up, I mean you say the president isn't batting 1,000. And for those that, my friends on the right, my friends that voted for Trump, or I don't mean my actual friends, I mean everybody on the right, essentially, who I consider my fellow American citizens, of course. If you are indeed pro-First Amendment, which, I mean, who wouldn't? It's America after all, at least it should be. If you are the type of people who's against the First Amendment, or for the First Amendment, rather, if you're for the First Amendment, but then you simultaneously hold the belief that if somebody disagrees with you, they should be fired, canceled, deplatformed, or any of those drastic measures, that is your prerogative. But please spare me. I'm begging you, please spare me this. We are the real patriots. We are real America. We are standing in the opposition of those that are trying to take down this country. Is there anything more un-American than coming after the First Amendment? I think one day, because I've studied presidential history. I've said this many times, hand to God, longer than I've been a fan of sports. That's why I did 3 years ago a presidential series called the Carving It Up U.S. Presidents Edition with Isaac Lawson. Had a blast. And I just finished a book about Abraham Lincoln the other day. It's by John Meacham. Fantastic stuff. Love presidential history, always have. And oftentimes in these tumultuous times, as we've had really over the last decade or so, I often kind of sit back and think, because I don't consider myself a historian. I just admire. I'm not as qualified as the great historians of the world. But I often sit back and think, I'm like, 50 years from now, what will they be saying about this time in American history? That's always fascinated me, and hopefully, knock on wood, I live to see it. I think this is just a guess. But one of the things that historians will observe is that Donald Trump's platform, so to speak, or his actions don't come from a politically ideological background. What I mean by that is he's not doing these things. He's not getting Jimmy Kimmel suspended or directly leading to Stephen Colbert's firing at the end of his season because of conservative ideologies. If anything, a conservative ideology, if we're being consistent, A, is small government, and B, is about as pro-free speech as anybody. Like, listen, if Thomas Jefferson existed today, he would be a Republican. Go back, he was big-time small government, at least until he became president, but different story for a different day. Trump has not made these decisions from a pure ideological perspective. It just so happens to line up with the fringes on the right, who he has brought into power and kicked out the regular old run-of-the-mill Republicans on the right, as the ones I just mentioned, Romney, the Cheneys, Bush, Kinzinger, anybody, Pence. He makes these decisions from the perspective and from the background that he has made most of them, because he's a small, thin-skinned, can't take criticism from anybody, little tyrant. That's what he is. It's what he's always been. And so I think it is remarkable just to watch this entire process take place. And I don't know. I'm a little surprised that people are surprised by this. I am. Yeah, was it a little shocking when I pull up my phone? Jimmy Kimmel suspended. Whoa, for what? Oh, for that? That was that's what. Oh, okay. So it came directly from the top. Like I said, don't say you're for that First Amendment if you support what Donald Trump is doing right now and banning anybody who comes after him, who has the audacity to say something that is short of he is the greatest whatever in the history of whatever, as he tends to say. So yeah, there you go. This week's edition of Carving Up the Context. Trump is the type of guy, and you see it on both sides, but he's the most flagrant example of this. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. If your ideas can't stand up to critique or debate, they're probably not that deeply rooted in facts, or you haven't thought about them or considered them or had them challenged in any way, which we should always do with all of our ideas. And that's why the psychopath who took out Charlie Kirk did what he did. Because agree or disagree with Charlie Kirk, he said, you know what, the only way to snuff Charlie Kirk out is not to debate him, is not to come after Turning Point in the sense that, hey, we're sick of them being in the spotlight. It's to take the man out, which of course is absurd. You can kill Charlie Kirk. You can kill any of us. You can't kill an idea. And I think Donald Trump should take a page out of that book in the sense that you can't kill an idea. You can't kill the platform of the host and also kill their criticism of you. That is it for this week's edition of Carving Up the Context. And I am just on the daily amused at, I mean, he, because that's one of the things they say too, right? Like he's this strong, he's the masculine president, right? He's for that First Amendment. He's manly. Most of the men I know can take a little ribbing. By the way, this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll move on. I mean, for 8 years, Barack Obama came out one time, I think it was in 2015, in a effing tan suit, and Fox News lost their minds. And that was on the mild side. They used racist attacks toward him, in particular towards Michelle. When Biden was president, he was a grandfather. He didn't know where he was in the world, and he's got to go to sleep at 6, and all the. And they attacked Fox. Biden famously called Peter Doocy a stupid SOB, which was not cool. I don't want to hear that from the president. Never called to revoke their license. Trump has with ABC, CBS, NBC, sued the New York Times, up and down the list. Because he's soft, can't take criticism, and it's further evidence of the little man he has always been. As we move forward, back to sports. A little bit of a strange transition, but back to sports. Did want to talk about Tennessee. They've got a matchup tomorrow against UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, coming off of what was truly as heartbreaking a loss to the Georgia Bulldogs. Forget just to Georgia in general, that I think I've witnessed as a Vols fan. And I'm 22 years old, so I haven't been on this earth that long. That one hurt. I'll talk about that and their upcoming matchup and some really encouraging numbers on Joey Aguilar on this week's edition of The Vol View, which starts right now.
Football time in Tennessee.
Indeed it is, as the voice of the late, great John Ward carries us into this week's edition, week 4 of the Vol View, which begins with Tennessee's upcoming game against UAB. But before we get to that, a recap of Tennessee's just gut punch of a loss to the Georgia Bulldogs, 44-41 in overtime. So I'll be honest, watching the game, with my family throughout, and I did pick Tennessee to win this game. I think 27-21 was my final score. I certainly took Tennessee in the points, and by the way, they did cover. To be fair, Tennessee did cover. It was 3.5 they covered. Excuse me. With that being said, there's a certain way to win and lose and to execute late in games. Up 8, 3 minutes to go, 4th down for Georgia, and Gunnar Stockton, who had been pretty darn solid over the course of that afternoon in Knoxville, throws an absolute dart down the right sideline. Touchdown. Georgia gets the 2-point conversion. All of a sudden, we look up, and it's a tie game at 38 with 2.5, 3 minutes to go. And it's like, that sucks. But ball's in Joey Aguilar's hands. Ball's in the hands of a guy who started the first quarter in fuego. I mean, just as hot as we've ever seen any Tennessee quarterback ever. Man's out here 10 for 10, 200 yards, few touchdowns. Chris Brazzle's out here mossing Georgia DBs. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Goes through a really cold stretch from about mid-third quarter onto mid-second quarter, all the way at least until late third quarter when he hits Brazzle on a bomb to kind of get Tennessee's offense back in sync, get the big play back in the mix. And I'll talk about that big play aspect of Tennessee in just a few minutes. But you look up, it's Mike's muted. Okay, we back? Want to make sure we're back. Okay, it looks like we're back. Anyways, so sorry about that. So yeah, Mike's back. So he gets the ball back. 3rd down conversions. Tennessee gets the football. And make sure I get this right. All the way down to the Georgia 20-yard line. They're in position to attempt a walk-off field goal from there by Max Gilbert. And before it, a false start to knock it to the 25. Now, a 43-yard attempt, is virtually automatic for NFL kickers these days. For college kickers, in the case of Max Gilbert, who had never been in that position at any point in his career, leaves you nervous as a Vols fan. They kept showing my guy, who's become a meme in the stands. He's got like a white Tennessee hat on, and he's got this Adidas white Tennessee shirt. He's got sunglasses on his hat, and he's just like, oh my God, is it going to happen again? Can we finally beat Georgia? And the kick is not even in the galaxy of the goalpost. I mean, it is just as far to the right as Donald Trump. I mean, it is bad. So the game goes to overtime. Tennessee settles for 3. Georgia ends up getting a touchdown. It was reviewed, ends up being a touchdown, and the Dogs walk it off there. And I got to admit, in the moment, I was devastated. That was as heartbreaking of a loss I've seen as a Vols fan in quite some time. But then you sleep on it, and you wake up the next day, and the AP Top 25 comes out, and Tennessee was 15th last week. They're 15th this week. Evidently, the committee was pretty impressed. And I was impressed looking back in the sense of, because I said 27-21, because the Josh Heupel team against a Kirby Smart defense had never scored more than 17 points. The Tennessee had lost up before Saturday's game. They'd lost 8 straight games to the Georgia Bulldogs. 4 of those had come with Josh Heupel, the offensive mastermind. They'd never scored more than 17 points in any of those games. And so if it got into a position where it became a shootout, Tennessee has the weapons. Can they do it against that defense? Well, they did, and they should have won. That makes you feel better if you're a Vols fan today. And if you look at Tennessee's upcoming schedule, then we'll talk about Joey Aguilar on the UAB game. You look at Tennessee's upcoming schedule, it's like, oh, UAB tomorrow. At Mississippi State, who's undefeated with the win over Arizona State, and those effing cowbells are so obnoxious in Starkville. Listen, Dak Prescott's a Mississippi State alum. Shout out to those fans. Fans are great people. But oh my gosh, I hate the cowbells. Okay? So that's not an easy game, so to speak. But they should beat Mississippi State. Home game against Arkansas for bye. That's a revenge game from last year. Tennessee lost to Arkansas on the road. You can't lose to Arkansas again. They're not going to do it. At Alabama, third Saturday of October, Bryant-Denny Stadium. Not going to be an easy one. Then you got at Kentucky. That's just probably a win. Home game against Oklahoma. John Mateer scares me, so we'll see. New Mexico State, at Florida. We always lose at Florida, which is a bit concerning, even though, DJ Lagway, 5 picks last week. Yikes. And then against Vanderbilt, who, 20th right now, but Diego Pavia took a lot of smack about Tennessee in the offseason. I think it's safe to say Tim Banks and that defense will remember. And those fans will certainly remember. Come November, is that November 30th, November 29th? If Tennessee can put themselves in a position, their 3 toughest games the rest of the year. At Bama, home for Oklahoma, at Florida. Go 2-1 in those games, win the rest of the games you should win, and you are guaranteed a spot. Guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff at 10-2. As brutal as the SEC is, as deep as that conference is, if you could have a win in Tuscaloosa on your resume, if you could have a win against Oklahoma and that defense and John Mateer and that offense on your resume, if you could finally, for the first time since I was 3 months old, go to the Swamp and get a W against those gosh darn Florida Gators. Go 2-1. That obviously 3-0. They're 100% in. 2-1 that stretch. Win the other games. The Arkansas, the Mississippi States, UABs, New Mexico States, Vanderbilts, Kentuckys. You're in the playoff. You are in that top 12 with an opportunity to go as far as you can go in the postseason. So ironically, I actually feel a little bit better about Tennessee now than I did before the Georgia game, because I thought there was a certain type of way that they could beat Georgia. They almost won a shootout over the Dogs. If kid doesn't miss a kick, we do win the shootout. So there you go. The thing I also wanted to say about Joey Aguilar, who, by the way, if we can look at, I should have made a graphic for this, but Joey Aguilar's stats against Georgia, the kid was nothing short of spectacular. 24 of 36, 371 passing. He had 4 touchdowns passing, 1 on the ground. Now, he did have 2 interceptions. One of them was virtually a punt, but still, the kid was fantastic. First big SEC star of his life against the freaking Georgia Bulldogs, coached by the great Kirby Smart. Did not blink. And something I've said, and it stood out to me in the Syracuse game, I said it on the Vol View that very next week. I'm like, oh, that's something. That's something Tennessee has had in a long time. Is a guy who can throw the deep ball consistently. We can show the numbers. Like that's what I've said. Tennessee hasn't had that since Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was a deep ball master with the likes of Jalen Hyatt and Brew McCoy and Cedric Tillman, all these guys. Joe Milton, as someone I know calls him Overthrow Joe, was a problem. Nico last year, problem. Joey Aguilar on the money. Here's the numbers. I saw this on Vol Twitter, and we certified it here in Carving It Up. Vol's quarterbacks the last 3 years on passes of 20 or more yards down the field. Joe Milton, 10 touchdowns, 4 picks, completed 29% of his throws. Nico Iamaleava last year, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, completed 32% of his throws. Joey Aguilar, 3 games into the season, by the way. One of them against the freaking Bulldogs. 7 touchdowns, 1 pick, 69% completion by Joey Aguilar on deep balls this season for Tennessee. Now, do I think the 69% is going to hold? No, that's unsustainable. But the fact that he's almost got as many touchdowns as Nico had all of last year on 20 or more yards down the field on those type of throws on deep balls. The fact this completion percentage doubles Nico, almost triples Joe Milton, shows me, and Vols fans know this. The receivers have always been there. Heupel's always dialed up the plays. The quarterback just can't hit him on the money. Well, this young man can. he can hit the Braylon Staley's of the world, the Mike Matthews of the world, and the Chris Brazzles of the world, who's been balling as of late. 3 touchdowns against Georgia. Tennessee's in good shape moving forward. So, in a game that I will be attending, very, very excited to go to this one. If we can pull it up, I believe we have the Tennessee and UAB game graphic. We have that? Okay, that's loading right now. No surprise. I'm going to go with the Vols. Don't know if I love minus 38.5, but they should take care of business against UAB. By the way, John Kitna's son is the quarterback of UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham. I think Tennessee takes care of business. They put up a 50-piece, 55-10 over UAB. Gets to 3-1, and then depending what happens ahead of them, obviously try and move up in the rankings. But you look around the SEC, LSU's having offensive troubles. Bama obviously had a loss. Now, looking back, Florida State's pretty darn good, and Bama's looked pretty solid since then. So the Tide, let's not panic yet on Alabama. They're still a very good football team on both sides of the ball, obviously. Florida's falling apart. Lenora Sellers is injured. Diego Pavia, that's not going to be sustainable. Texas, I don't know if you've seen Arch Manning. I'm pulling for the kid, but he's the most inaccurate quarterback in the conference. Under Joey Aguilar, I like the Vols' chances to compete. I do. I feel like John Gruden. I feel like the Vols' chances to compete, man. So that is it for this week's edition of the Vol View.
Football time in Tennessee.
All right, there you go. We'll be back in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live to do NFL predictions week 3. And I'm really trying to bounce back after a rough 2 weeks start the season. But I'm back. I'm ready to go. Carving It Up week 3 NFL predictions coming up after this 1 minute break. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Okay, it is a segment I just want to have so bad during not just the summer, but really in between the end of the Super Bowl and the start of the new NFL season. That 7-month stretch, I'm like, I just want to do NFL predictions so bad. Like, yeah, there's March Madness stuff, and everybody does their brackets. And once the NBA playoffs roll around, I like to do my NBA, playoff predictions. But there's just something about that Friday, top of the second hour of Carving It Up. 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. I'm just going through each and every single game and predicting them all. So let's just go and get the background music going. Let's not waste any time. Get right into week 3 NFL predictions. Here we go. Alrighty. Before we get into predictions, first time we've been able to track this. We were able to do it last week, but we've got more data to show to you guys. I'm embarrassed to even show this graphic, but just out of full transparency to you, the audience. This is where we're at. So my overall record, 20-12. Against the spread, 4-18. Disaster. Upset of the week, 0-2. Listen, you're supposed to have a losing record on upset of the week. Oh my gosh. If the Jaguars would have just come up on 4th down last week. If Jake Browning hadn't let a walk-off drive, I would have gotten that right. Bryson, Bleak, Bet, ironically, is my only winning segment, 2-0. that last one on the bottom, that one breaks my heart. If I were a bet man, 1-5. 1-5. Yeah. But 3-0 this week, baby. Week 2 went 10-6 in totality, which I did in week 1 as well, by the way. Week 2 against the spread, disaster, 4-12. But we're going to rebound this week, starting with the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis. This is a matchup rather between two backups. Jake Browning for the Bengals, Carson Wentz for the Vikings. Minnesota is a 3.5-point favorite at home. So first of all, Carson Wentz making NFL history. This is now 6 consecutive seasons in which he started for a different team. Okay, 2020 obviously is Philadelphia, where he spent the majority of his career to this point. But 2020 Philadelphia, 2021 Indianapolis, 22 Washington, 23 LA Rams, 24 Kansas City, 25 Minnesota. So Carson Wentz is trying to join the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh Johnson list of I've been everywhere, man, because he has. So he's starting this game. The question really for Minnesota is, okay, who gives us the better edge at quarterback? It's Carson Wentz, who's been on 6 teams. And if you look at his start last year for Kansas City, his one start, disastrous. Chiefs got shut out against Denver in a game the Chiefs didn't have to win, the Broncos did. But still, let's put a crooked number on the board or something to use baseball terminology. But still, he's bad. Or J.J. McCarthy, who in 8 quarters of football has been awful in 7 of them, who unfortunately is going to be out for the foreseeable future. I think about 2 to 4 weeks is when they anticipate that the ankle injury will keep J.J. McCarthy out. So it's Carson Wentz in the lineup. Listen, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Brian Flores' defense. The adjustments to really kind of confuse Caleb Williams from the second quarter on in that win over Chicago. By the way, despite the fact that Ben Johnson has had a lot of success in his career against Brian Flores in previous years, obviously back with Detroit, and the fact that, the defense did all they could against Michael Penix and the Falcons. Atlanta moved the ball, but could not, for the life of them, cash in the red zone until late in the game when the outcome had pretty much been decided based on how J.J. McCarthy had been playing. So I like Minnesota in this spot. I like the -3.5. Jake Browning threw 3 picks last week against the Jags defense, which is good, by the way, but I think Minnesota's defense is far better. We know Brian Flores is one of the 2 best defensive coordinators. You can make a case he's the best defensive coordinator in the National Football League. Give me Minnesota 23-17 over the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, the game I dread every week. Not Bryce's Bleak bet. It used to be the game I dreaded every week. Now that's not it. It's my team. The Pittsburgh Steelers, New England Patriots from Foxborough, Massachusetts, in which my beloved Steelers are road favorites, -1.5. Now, they say in NFL betting circles, if you look at the list of games, you see Pittsburgh Steelers are playing at home and they're underdogs. Boy, that is free money. Mike Tomlin's a home dog is, cash right in the bank. Just go and deposit that check. Road favorite, he's atrocious throughout his career. And we even saw in week 1, 2.5-point favorites against the Jets, and you couldn't even cover that. You had to have Aaron Rodgers turn back the clock, look like Packers Aaron Rodgers just to save you. And Chris Boswell hitting a 60-yard field goal to beat Justin Fields on the Jets. Speaking of which, this for the Steelers offensively is a matchup nightmare. First of all, the Steelers O-line, according to Pro Football Focus, one of the 10 worst in football. I didn't have to look at Pro Football Focus to see that. I watched with my own eyes the last few years. It's terrible. Steelers O-line is as bad as it's ever been, with an immobile quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, the Patriots lead the league in sacks with 9. That doesn't bode well for Aaron Rodgers and for the Pittsburgh Steelers. By the way, Aaron Rodgers with a clean pocket, with 2.5 seconds to throw last week. Because, listen, watching that game just with the naked eye, I'm like, some of this is Aaron. Man had a pass ring of 58. Yeah, he's 41, old, can't move, and hasn't been good in 4 years. Like, I said that verbatim over and over and over on the show. But I was like, I put about 70% of that in the offensive line. And then you look at the numbers. Aaron Rodgers with a clean pocket, 2.5 seconds to throw. 8 for 19. Now, some of that, Steelers receivers can't separate. And some of that is Aaron doesn't like to push the ball down the field. Aaron can't move anymore. Aaron's not good anymore. And if there's one thing I can say about the Steelers defense, can we go and show this stat from Mike Tomlin? Last 10 games, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, ladies and gentlemen. 27 points per. That's 28th in the NFL. 375 total yards per game allowed. That is 4th worst in the National Football League, given up by the highest compensated defense in all the land, in all of the NFL. That's Mike Tomlin's defense. So why in God's name Do I think that's going to change? Based on how the Patriots performed against Miami, bad Dolphins defense, I get it, but Drake May, he was efficient. They ran the football effectively. Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson. I've got the Patriots, 26-19. Just give me one reason why the Steelers offense is going to work against New England. It's not. Milton Williams has been good in that interior of the defensive line. Expect him to have a big game. Patriots plus 1.5. Listen, I've taken the other team. I've taken the underdog against my Steelers and the points 3 straight games. Correct on the first 2. Hope I'm wrong. Well, I hope it's New England plus 1.5, but Pittsburgh to win. But yeah, Steelers are better than the Steelers. I'm sorry, the Patriots are better than the Steelers. I'm sorry. It's not that good of a team. Like, I don't know what people are trying to convince me otherwise. All right, Indianapolis Colts, Tennessee Titans. This is almost my Bryson Bleak bet game, but I decided against it. Indianapolis on the road, a 4.5-point favorite against Tennessee. This feels like a little bit of overinflation of Daniel Jones, who, to his credit, has been fantastic. The Colts scored on their first 10 drives of the season. Scored every possession in the first game against Miami. I think they scored like the first 2 against the Denver Broncos last week. Denver, who has a good defense. Tennessee, on the other hand, hung in there with the Rams last week, gave the defending champions problems, or not the defending champions, my bad, a previous Super Bowl champion problems, defending NFC West champions. Byron Young makes a play on Cam Ward, and the Rams pull away from there. Division matchup, familiarity, a little bit of overinflation on Daniel Jones. The Titans do have a good defense. I'll take the Colts to win. Tennessee and the points is the play here. Plus 4.5 Tennessee. I mean, it was 3.5, and I was kind of going back and forth. Once it went to 4.5 Tennessee, that feels like a pretty safe bet. 24-21 Colts over the Titans in this spot. Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm looking at this one, I'm saying, okay, both teams are in turmoil for different reasons. Because if you look at the Texans right now, 0-2, lost a heartbreaker to Tampa, lost a game where they had a chance to win against the Rams, and then Wale fumbles, and that's that. O-line's just as bad as we thought. Defense is just as good as we thought. Problem is they can't get any help from the offensive side of the ball. They can get help from special teams. Can't get anything from C.J. Stroud because he doesn't have time to throw. And because outside of Nico Collins, wide receiving core is just as bad as we thought. This is why I didn't buy into the Texans this year. But just on the strength of their defense, they will be able to stay in games. But the offense is in turmoil. Same can be said about Jacksonville, not so much as the offense isn't working, because Trevor made good throws. He made great plays over the course of that game against Cincinnati. He should have had 4 touchdown passes if one of them wasn't dropped. But late in the game, 4th down, chance to ice it. They go for it. Trevor misses on 3rd down. Liam Cohen on the sideline, hitting his chest. Hit him in the chest, Trevor. Trevor looks over. Man, get out of here. Not great, 2 games of the season with the relationship between the quarterback and coach. Not ideal. So can they right the ship in a game against Houston? Well, here's what I know. Against a great Texans pass rush, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Trevor Lawrence has had one of the cleanest pockets statistically in all of the NFL. That is, I forget what the stat was, but Pro Football Focus pointed it out, that Trevor has simply not been pressured very often all season long. I'm going to go Jacksonville, 24-20, same score as the Colts and Titans. Yeah, same score as the Colts-Titans game. I guess, yeah, no, that was 24-21. 24-20, Jaguars minus 1.5. I'm not crazy about it, but I'll go Jacksonville in this spot. It is now time for my upset of the week. Divisional matchup, here we go. Give me the Carolina Panthers, baby. Keep pounding over the Atlanta Falcons, 23-21. Carolina plus 5.5, which I love, by the way. And to win this game outright, Panthers over the Falcons, upset of the week. Here's why. First of all, as we saw last week, Michael Penix Jr. I thought was relatively impressive, but the Falcons couldn't score in the red zone. Like, they just could not cash in inside the 20-yard line. Carolina, you look at their performance last week against the Arizona Cardinals, down 27-3. Bryce Young leads a roaring comeback. Right? They get an onside kick, some sacks, penalties, put them out of field goal range, or not out of field goal range, but in their drive. Bryce showed some promise in the second half of that game. He looked like the Bryce Young at the end of last season, 10 touchdowns, no picks, where it's like, oh, okay. Almost beat the Chiefs, almost beat the Eagles, almost beat the Tampa Bay Bucks. Like, had some moments over the course of the season where, okay, Bryce had something here. That's why he's the number 1 overall pick. He's not better than C.J. Stroud, but he's playing comparable to C.J. Numbers show that at the end of last year. The eye test showed you that. Who did Bryce Young beat to end the season when the Panthers have nothing to play for? The other team had everything to play for. I'm, of course, talking about the Atlanta Falcons at Atlanta. You're telling me in the home opener for Carolina, the momentum coming off of the second half of that near comeback, the defense tightens up. They're able to stop Kyler Murray. The offensive line finally protects Bryce. He's accurate. Ted McMillan, all these guys, Chuba Hubbard, play with the lead. Bryce works off play action. I think the Panthers upset their division rival, the Atlanta Falcons, this week, 23-21. I love them in this spot. Carolina over Atlanta, 23-21. This next game, we're not labeling this anything because it is NFL schedule makers are the best in the business at what they do. They just are. They know when to put the biggest games, except for this one. Schedule makers, you done messed up on this one. You did. You done messed up, schedule makers.
You done messed up, Aaron!
If some guy named Aaron made the schedules, not good, Aaron. LA Rams, Philadelphia Eagles, playoff rematch. The one team that gave the Eagles a real shot at getting eliminated in the postseason. And it's in the early window? Listen, Dallas-Chicago is going to be fascinating. I'll get to that game later. I get that's America's Game of the Week. Okay, it's the Cowboys. We get that. They draw the ratings. The Sunday Night Football game, okay, it's the Chiefs. Taylor might be there and the Giants and Russell and okay. And the Monday night game's good. Don't get me wrong. Detroit, Baltimore, it's a great Monday night game. This should have been a primetime game or a 4:30 game at the very least. So come on. Like the fact that outside of Philly, LA, surrounding areas, and those of us who have NFL Sunday ticket, the fact that the whole country won't get to see this game, quite unfortunate. Nonetheless, Eagles in this game favored -3.5. So we talked about earlier in the show that the NFL is going to crack down on the Tush Push. Not crack down on Philadelphia running it legally. As in, guards, stop false starting. I don't know if they're going to enforce center, Cam Jurgens, stop being on top of the football when you're snapping it to Jalen Hurts. Don't know if they're going to enforce that. We'll see. Illegal formation, but they should be calling false starts. Will that affect them over the course of this game against the Rams, who have one of the better defensive lines in the NFL, inside and out? I also know this. Philadelphia secondary is suspect. It is the weakness of their team. Adoree Jackson, Dak Prescott did it. Patrick Mahomes did it. They went at him all game long. Didn't always hit on it, but went after Adoree Jackson over the course of both of the Philadelphia Eagles' first two games. Philadelphia's downfield passing game has been suspect to say the very least. I think as time goes on, particularly after the bye at some point for Philadelphia, they'll open it up. But here and now, conservative, play it short, death by 1,000 cuts, which they're capable of doing. They won games, playoff games, with that formula. Running the ball with Saquon Barkley. But the way Matt Stafford is cooking with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, the way that Rams offensive line can protect against that Eagles front, Jalen Carter, remember, Jalen Carter kind of ended that game last year on Matthew Stafford. It ain't snowy. It ain't January. It's December. I've got the Rams in an upset. Give me Los Angeles 26-20 over the Philadelphia Eagles. Rams plus 3.5 and to win outright 26-20. Listen, I think they're going to move the ball on Philadelphia. We've seen, listen, Mahomes of the Chiefs moved against Philadelphia, particularly that one drive that ended with the Kelsey drop at will. Just couldn't cash in the red zone. Harrison Butker missed a kick, and as for the Cowboys, it was CeeDee Lamb drops. Right? So Philadelphia's defense, at least in the back end, is not nearly as productive as it was a year ago. Their front seven's going to have to do some heavy lifting in the early part of the season while the back end and while the secondary gets it figured out. Well, too early in the season for them to figure it out against Matt Stafford and that passing game. Give me the Rams 26-20 over the Philadelphia Eagles. The New York Jets, Tampa Bay Bucks, a game that features not the protege, but the master and the apprentice, so to speak. Tyrod Taylor, my bad, as Baker Mayfield corrected the media and us. Tyrod Taylor, quarterback for the New York Jets, who's starting for Justin Fields, who's unfortunately in concussion protocol, taking on Baker Mayfield. They were teammates with the Browns back in 2018. Taylor started the first few games. Then Baker came in, had a great rookie season. And Baker, if you just heard it all in his remarks all week during the pressers, has nothing but respect for Tyrod Taylor, who I think will be more productive and give more juice to this Jets offense than Justin Fields because he's a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields. Not as mobile. He's getting up there in age. He's not as mobile as he used to be. Certainly not as mobile as Fields is, but can push the ball down the field. Garrett Wilson will get involved. I am concerned about the fact that Kalijah Cansey is out long-term for Tampa Bay. They're really good defensive linemen. But other than that, I think this is a blowout seed for Tampa. Let's look at what Baker's done since 2024, since the start of last season. Second in touchdown passes, third in pass yards per game, third in completion percentage, 4th in passer rating. So Baker, touchdown maker, has been working. Give me the Bucs in a blowout, 31-16 over the New York Jets, minus the 6.5. That feels like if it were, again, the 31-16 is my prediction, but if you were on the surface looking at Tampa minus 8.5, just because, they've won their first 2 games close. It took Baker, game-winning drives. I don't know if I love 6.5 is the number. Bucs win by more than a touchdown, 31-16 over the New York Jets. So I like them in the spot. This game is really kind of flipped in terms of how we view it, because the Las Vegas Raiders go to Landover, Maryland to take on the Washington Commanders, who, thank God, finally got a new stadium. that got reported this week. Listen, FedEx Field has nothing to do with the fans. Fans are great, but FedEx Field is far and away, I've been saying the show for years, the worst stadium in all of football. I'll never forget that viral video where the fans are leaning over the rails in front of the Eagles tunnel and a bunch of fans fall on top of Jalen Hurts. Fortunately, it didn't look like anybody got hurt, but that stadium's a disaster. So good for Washington. It's a well-run franchise now. The bad news for the Commanders is, though, Jaden Daniels ain't playing. He got hurt in the Green Bay game. It's going to be Marcus Mariota. Dan Quinn announced today, which I figured Daniels wasn't going to play when I saw that he didn't practice, but then Dan Quinn came out and announced Mariota's going to start, ironically, against one of his former teams in the Vegas Raiders. I still think Mariota, like most backup quarterbacks, which I will say it once, I'll say it again, I still don't get Cooper Rush as the backup for Lamar Jackson. That one doesn't make sense, because if a backup has to come in, you don't really want to have to change the offensive system. You would in Baltimore. You do not have to do that in the case of the Washington Commanders, because Marcus Mariota, we know, is mobile, certainly doesn't have the arm strength of Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he's not the player Jaden Daniels is. They were both second overall picks in the draft, ironically. But against this Raiders defense, against Max Crosby, who's a great pass rusher, but Raiders don't have much else on that side, Justin Herbert, to use the name of the show, carved up that Raiders defense last week. But if there's one thing I know about Geno Smith, he's a roller coaster, ladies and gentlemen. He is a Six Flags attraction. He's all over the place. He tortured the New England Patriots week 1. He's a disaster. Multiple picks against the Chargers in week 2. I think this is his game against a bad Washington defense, considering the fact that Washington doesn't have Daniels or Austin Eckler on the offensive side. Obviously, they lost Dietrich Wise Jr. on the defensive side. They lost Jonathan Allen, by the way, in the offseason too. Marshawn Lattimore is going to get cooked all game long. Give me, especially Brock Bowers is playing, the Vegas Raiders plus 2.5 and the outright win, 27-22. Geno Smith will do what he tends to do sometimes, right? Have us kind of fooled that, Geno's back. Raiders will get to 2-1. They'll have a winning record. They'll feel good about themselves. Raiders 27, Commanders 22. Second straight loss for Washington. Packers, Browns. My bad. That game, the way I have the graphic, it has Green Bay as the home team. I apologize for that. It should say Browns the home team, but my apologies on that. But Green Bay is in Cleveland, taking on the Browns. They are 7.5-point favorites on the road at Cleveland. So, listen, this Packers D-line has just been a shocker. It's almost like trading for Micah Parsons would make you better, despite what Jerry Jones says, right? Despite, Micah can't stop the run, and he kind of disappears as a pass rusher. It didn't look like it the first 2 games. And he's new to the system, new to Jeff Hafley's system in Green Bay. He's got Rashawn Gary on the opposite side. Green Bay is going to win this game, spoiler alert, the way that they're going to win most of their games this year, which is Jordan Love, air it out, Josh Jacobs punching in from the 1. Even if we don't have Jaden Reed, we've still got Wicks and Golden and Dobbs. It doesn't look like Tucker Kraft's going to be available for this game, so that is a little bit of a concern for Green Bay. You don't have that good red zone, third down, Jordan Love safety blanket there, but still, Green Bay is as deep as any team in football at the wide receiver pass-catching position. This is going to be the score's not going to indicate how much the Packers are going to dominate. Build a lead, double digits, pin yours back, Micah Parsons, come after old man Joe Flacco. We might knock on wood for Joe, but we might very well see Dylan Gabriel play in this game for the Browns. Again, the way that this graphic is designed, I apologize. It should say Cleveland as the home team. It says the Packers the home team. I'll get that lined up and fixed before Sunday when those graphics are posted on my IG. Packers win 24-10 over the Cleveland Browns. This is a game. They got Dallas next week at Dallas. Micah Parsons return to Jerry World to take on the Cowboys. They're not going to want to put too much on film on both sides of the ball. They can kind of play. It's kind of like in the preseason when the game plan isn't terribly exotic for the young rookies to run, because you don't want to give the other coaches a look into your game plan. So that's what Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley's going to do. Give me the Packers 24-10. It's now time for Bryson's Bleak Bet. It's one game each and every week that I've absolutely zero confidence in predicting, but hey, you got to predict them all. AFC West divisional matchup. Denver Broncos on the road. LA Chargers. The Chargers in this game favored -2.5. So, by the way, 2-0 on Bryce's Bleak bet. I say it's the one game every week I have no confidence predicting. Well, I'm 2-0 thus far. Barely 2-0, but 2-0. Here's what I look at. Sean Payton is the ultimate in your behind type of head coach. Right? He's the type of guy where if you lose a game that you should not have lost, and Denver lost a game to the Colts, they should not have lost. Bo Nix threw a bad second half pick. They had a missed field goal late. They forced a missed 60-yarder by the Colts, but then a penalty's called for leverage. Get 15 yards closer, and the Colts walking off with a field goal at the gun in Indy. So they lost the game they should not have won. Denver outplayed the Colts in that spot. So Sean Payton's going to be on them all week. I'm sure he has been. And then on the side of the Chargers, okay, not only a short week in that they played on Monday Night Football, but that they had to fly from Vegas to Los Angeles. Not like a crazy flight by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm sure they got there in the wee hours of Tuesday morning. So get in Tuesday morning, install the game plan, adjust quickly. That's a little bit of a concern. However, with the losses Denver has in their defense, Dre Greenlaw, by the way, is one of the people who's out this week for the Broncos. I have not been impressed by what I've seen from Denver's defense. One that I thought was going to be just a bunch of game wreckers coming into the season. They very well might still be that. What I've seen to the first couple of games, Tennessee moved the ball fine. Cam Ward was pretty good. Calvin Ridley just couldn't catch cold. That was the problem. And last week, Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones, whatever you want to call him, was great. Moved the ball at will against this team. With that being said, I've got the Chargers. It's a bleak bet. Again, Justin Herbert's been awesome. It has nothing to do with Justin Herbert's ability. It's a matter of a divisional matchup, familiarity, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh. But the Chargers did sweep the Broncos last season, including a Thursday night game in Los Angeles. Give me LA 27-20. They'll continue to show themselves as a true Super Bowl contender. I saved them all for the end, baby. It is now time for my favorite segment of the week. It is called
Bettin Man.
If I Were a Bettin Man. I'm looking at one that I feel so good about. The Arizona Cardinals on the road in San Francisco. In a game where the line has changed throughout the week. It was just announced by Kyle Shanahan that Brock Purdy is not going to play in this football game. It's going to be Mac Jones, old Mac Jones again for the Niners. And by the way, Mac, to his credit in that game against the Saints last week, 3 touchdowns, passer rating over 100, and completing 67% of his throws. He looked pretty good. He looked like the old Mac Jones out of Alabama. Out here wheeling and dealing, throwing to Devontae Smith and all these pass catchers and hand the ball to Najee Harris. You Bama fans remember what I'm talking about, that last national championship winning team in 2020? Well, unfortunately, he's not that player. Noodle arm doesn't move well, bad leadership, dirty, as I've talked about for years. His struggles in New England. But Kyle Shanahan can make anybody look good. At least against the New Orleans Saints, who are the worst team in football. Against the Cardinals, a defense that, yes, struggled in the second half against Bryce Young and the Panthers, to be fair, but good D-line. Will Johnson is going to just give Ricky Pearsall, who's been impressed the first part of the season, fits. I don't trust this Niners offensive line against that Cardinals pass rush. Calais Campbell obviously made the play late. The ageless vet made the play on Bryce Young, who can move a little bit better than his former Bama teammate Mac Jones. If I were a bet man, love Arizona in the spot. 23-22 plus 2.5. Listen, get Arizona plus 2.5 while you can before this number flips. Because, listen, maybe the betting public is just going to be fooled by Mac Jones after one decent game for the first time in multiple years for him. But at the same time, take the Cardinals plus 2.5. That's what I'm telling you. If I were a bet man, Arizona 23-22, and the Cardinals, look at the Arizona Cardinals, 3-0. Winner of this game's 3-0. So I got Arizona winning this game. If I were a bet man, Cardinals plus 2.5. Okay, it's time for the second game for
Bettin Man.
If I were a bet man, we're staying in the NFC West. The Seattle Seahawks hosting the aforementioned worst team in the NFL, the New Orleans Saints. This is New Orleans' first road game of the season. They're 7.5-point dogs. Their defense is bad, coached by Brandon Staley. Meanwhile, for the Seattle Seahawks, you have to feel pretty good about yourself if you're a Seahawks fan. You're thinking, man, if Reek Woolen just, I don't know, looks up and sees Brock Purdy's throwing him a perfect spiral for the game-ending interception, instead he let a backup tight end make the play. And then if Sam Darnold, who was driving down the field for the game-winning touchdown, does that fumble literally off of one of his offensive linemen's butts, we win that game. And then we go to Pittsburgh. And some of it was a Steelers special teams error. Trust me, I know. What are you doing, Caleb Johnson? Aaron Rodgers is limited. Steelers O-line's bad, all of it. But Sam Darnold had 2 turnovers, and you still won a game in Pittsburgh by 2 scores. Pretty good. Pretty impressive. Long flight from Seattle to Pittsburgh. That defensive line for Seattle is really, really strong. Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence. They're going to give Spencer Rattler a long afternoon. Seattle minus 7.5. Thank you very much. Seahawks 31, Saints 14. The biggest lopsided victory over this weekend. If I were a bet man, give me the Seattle Seahawks minus 7.5. It is now time for the final game for
Bettin Man.
If I were a bet man, the America's Game of the Week on Fox, and we are going to get at the old-fashioned, it's in Chicago, but Texas shootout. The Dallas Cowboys, the Chicago Bears from the Windy City. Dallas is favored by 1.5. Now, this would have been my, if I were a Betman game of the year, if the line had stayed where it was at originally after Sunday's games. It was initially Bears minus 1.5, which is like, oh my God, I get Dallas as a 1.5 point dog. This is unbelievable. As bad as this Bears defense is, Bears missing multiple corners, including Jalen Johnson, who might not even play this season, which is really unfortunate because he's a great player, all-pro guy. Bears have got some practice squad guys in their secondary, and you mean to tell me they're supposed to stop? Oh, rain Dakota Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, and a running game in Dallas that all of a sudden you look up, you're like, oh, pretty good. All right, Javonte Williams, second Cowboys running back ever outside of Calvin Hill to have 150 rushing yards in his first 2 games as a Cowboy. Offensive line's protected well, and safe to say the Bears D-line ain't exactly the Giants D-line, which is one of the best in the NFL. Held up fine, ran the football effectively. Dak was, well, Dak, he's awesome. We know this. Now, I think Caleb is going to have a little bit of a, I don't want to say coming out party in the sense that like he just balls out and throws it all over the yard, but all the criticism, all of the shade, now he gets to play not just a Cowboys defense, but a Matt Eberflus defense, who was his head coach last year. Matt Eberflus has seen Caleb Williams play, but he ain't got the horses. Defensively, the Cowboys ain't got the guys to stop Chicago's offense and all the weapons they have. Caleb Williams, he's like, Roma Dunze, kind of one of our only bright spot against Detroit last week. DJ Moore, and unfortunately, DeAndre Swift's out for this game, so Caleb is going to have to throw the ball a lot. It is going to be a good old-fashioned shootout, back and forth, very high-scoring game. Hammer the over for this one if you're a fan. I remember I told y'all in week 1, Texans-Rams, that is under all the way. Hammer the over for this one. If I were a bet man, give me the Dallas Cowboys minus 1.5, 41-30. We get a lot of points in this one. Both defenses, both secondaries in particular, are atrocious. Caleb is going to start to figure it out. Ben Johnson's going to give the Cowboys fits as he has in the past. Dak is going to pad those numbers. Get 4 touchdown passes for Dak. Right, 2 to CeeDee Lamb, 1 to Pickens, 1 to, let's give 1 to Miles Sanders. Let's be nice. Miles Sanders on the screen pass. Cowboys, 41, Bears, 30. And final game, you got the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants in the Meadowlands. Kansas City is favored minus 6.5. It's a must-win for the Chiefs. They have to win this game if we have any respect or regard for them as a Super Bowl contender. As much as I love and respect Mahomes, as I say many times in this show, I will not bet against Patrick Mahomes until he gives me a reason to. Well, if you lose a game at the Giants that you know you have to win, okay, you give me a reason to. I can bet against you going forward the rest of the season. Speaking of bad defense, the Giants secondary, now some of this is the fact that they were facing Dak Prescott, who's beaten them 14 times in a row going back to 2017. Some of it's that. But some of it is that the Giants secondary is genuinely bad. The secondary cannot cover for their outstanding pass rush and defensive line. This is going to be a game. Andy Reid may try and establish the run. It's not going to work. That has been the weakness of the Kansas City team throughout. People talk about, the receivers. No. It's the running game. It is Isaiah Pacheco. It is Kareem Hunt, who's a good short yardage back. He's almost like a fullback at this point, and the Chiefs use him in those type of formations. Isaiah Pacheco, maybe he shocks me. Maybe Isaiah Pacheco runs for 100 yards, 5 yards a clip. The Chiefs play, keep away and run the clock and play a style of offense that they usually don't play. But I think with Xavier Worthy back in the lineup, and he is the guy, even over Rashee Rice, who'll be back in a few weeks for the Chiefs. He is the guy that Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes believe, okay, that's our true number one. What he showed us last year, was great in the postseason. He was our only bright spot in the Super Bowl against Philadelphia on some of those deep balls. He's going to be back with Hollywood Brown, with Travis Kelce, who had a big game against the Philadelphia Eagles and those great linebackers. I know there's a lot of hype on Russ. Happy for Russ. He balled out against Dallas, 450 passing yards. But he ain't cooking against that Kansas City defense. I think the Chiefs are dropping a 30 burger finally Who'd have thought that these would be two 0-2 teams coming to the season? It's quite shocking. But give me the Chiefs 31-17 over the New York Giants. Do I love the 6.5? I can't say I do, but Chiefs win 31-17 over the New York Giants. I know I say it every week and I sound like a broken record, but I do feel like this is a 3-0 week on If I Were a Bet Man. And part of the reason I do If I Were a Bet Man is to simulate, okay, if I did bet, what would it look like? But also, trying to help you, the audience. I'm trying to win you money. And I know, it has not looked good the first 2 weeks of the season. 1-5 on If I Were a Bet Man, not great. But in this spot, Seattle, you get Seattle -7.5. That's it. You're going to look back when the season's over like, oh, Seattle ended up being an okay team, and the Saints have the number 1 pick. And I got Seattle at home -7.5. That's a surefire bet. I get to take a team as an underdog against Mac Jones. An undefeated team as an underdog against Mac Jones in a divisional game with a good defense? Yeah, you'll take Arizona in that spot. And Dallas is only favored by 1.5 against an atrocious defense. Now, they themselves also have an atrocious defense, to be fair. But who's the tiebreaker? Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams? I think we're going to roll with Dak. That's the If I Were Betman games. And Bryson Bleak bet. One game I have no confidence in predicting. Listen, if we come out and Denver wins this game, I won't be shocked in the slightest, but I think the Chargers are rolling. I don't know if they'll be able to establish a run game. I think Justin Herbert's going to continue to have to air it out all over Los Angeles. Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, what's my man's name? Lab McConkey. Don't feel terribly confident in that game. And my upset of the week, I'm going out on a limb here. 5.5-point dogs at home against a team they've had success against a team this quarterback has had success against, Bryce Young. Panthers over the Falcons 23-21. Even still, even if you don't like Carolina to win the game, 5.5 for Atlanta on the road is not. That's too much, especially for what Carolina showed late. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on X, Facebook, and on Instagram. Be sure also to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts. You can find us and all of our incredible content creators at the Grid Network. And we will be back on Monday. Hope for a great weekend. Also, by the way, last thing too, if you haven't been catching it already, watch some WNBA playoff basketball. The last 3 games have been spectacular. Unfortunately, my beloved Golden State Valkyries, yes, I'm a Valkyries fan because I'm a Warriors fan. I'm supporting the WNBA team. Had a chance to force a decisive game 3 against the mighty Minnesota Lynx, the number 1 seed in the entire playoffs. Nafisa Collier, all of it. And Nafisa had a big jumper, and they eliminated the Valkyries. Valkyries had a shot to win it at the end, came off short, and or actually it came off long, rather. And Minnesota advanced. And in the second to last game, the Indiana Fever, missing 6 players, including Caitlin Clark, go on the road to Atlanta. They take on the Atlanta Dream. They trail throughout, and then former number 1 overall pick, Aaliyah Boston, game-winning shot. They get the stop play. They steal a pass on the inbound, and the Indiana Fever win their first playoff series in a decade, minus Caitlin Clark. So wait till they get her back and get Sophie Cunningham and some of these pieces back next year. It's really a bummer because Indiana's playing Vegas in the second round, in part because Vegas won another thriller against the who was it against? Seattle Storm. They beat the Seattle Storm. Vegas has been the hottest team in the league. They won 16 straight to end the regular season. Asia Wilson has been playing like a woman amongst girls. She's been insane. Best player in the WNBA. Missed a game-winning shot. Jackie, I believe it was Jackie Young, came in, grabbed the rebound, and put it back in, and the Aces ended up advancing. I wish we could have gotten Caitlin Clark versus Asia Wilson in the second round. You got the most popular player versus the best player, 2 different positions. They wouldn't have guarded each other, but that would have been really fun. But watch some WNBA playoffs. It's great stuff that we have seen in recent. There's a big game tonight. New York Liberty and the Phoenix Mercury. Defending champs are on the brink tonight. So very, very excited to watch that. Playoff baseball is in a week. My Red Sox better get their you-know-what together, or we're going to have a 2011 collapse. I'm very nervous as a Sox fan. 1 minute, we got a shot to win the division. The second, we're just trying to hold off Cleveland. We can't lose to Cleveland. We can't lose to the Guardians to miss out in the playoffs. We can't do it. I'm nervous. We'll see how the weekend plays out. Have a great one, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. I'm telling you, y'all better not blow this playoffs, Red Sox. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.